We have decided to title this How to Greed Responsibly. So it's going to be a very different kind of vibe. I'm going to be sharing the podium here as we go over in great detail, boss by boss, little tips and tricks on how best to capitalize on DPS and mitigate mechanics in order to do better damage. So we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, but bear with us. It will be very different today. Hopefully you learned something new. If you have any questions, please shout them out. We will try our best to address them. But this is being recorded for posterity for our guild. So this VOD is going to be kept for the rest of our guild to be able to check in on it later. This is part 2. We went over some really big strokes in the first stream we did on Tuesday, basically covering the basics. But this time we're going to be going boss by boss, mechanic by mechanic, through each wing, sort of explaining the best ways to deal with mechanics and do better damage with each class that we've played, and then give you the tools to sort of check in with your own class, your own build, and see how these things can be applied to your ability to do damage. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Should be great. Remember, I can't be doing what I normally do, which is sort of talking to you guys directly while someone else is talking in the Discord. I'm going to be sharing the floor with them because later this video will be watched by our guild, and I can't, I don't want to be talking over them. So it's going to be a bit different. You might see me typing in here a little bit in response to you guys, but should be fun. Should be a lot of fun. If you have any questions, again, shout them out, because if you have a question, maybe someone else does too, that they will appreciate you asking it for.
Okay, well, welcome to the 2 people in Discord. Masterclass part 2, and welcome to everyone watching Maeric's stream. This is part 2 of the DPS Masterclass we started on Tuesday. The Tuesday one was more of a general one, talking about little tips and tricks that you can do generally, rotation-wise, things like that, to increase your DPS. This masterclass will be focusing more on each boss, because like I said last week, every boss has different modifiers and things just like players do, and different phasing and all kinds of good stuff like that, and all of that is very important to know how to increase your DPS, so we will be going into detail. Without further ado, I think we can just start from the beginning. Wing 1, VG. As we go through, I will be talking about more general things, just basically the boss things, phasing, any of their modifiers, and then I will let Cryptic and Maeric talk in more detail about how to work and adjust your rotation around those things. So VG, fairly simple. The things you really want to focus on, obviously getting teleported. It's a big DPS loss. Try not to do that. VG can be unfriendly to players with very many or very long animation locks. So if you're learning a fight like VG, it's possibly encouraged to not use a build like that, just so you're not getting teleported all the time. The other thing that people will focus on a lot is the split phases, obviously. How most people will do the splits these days is you're going to bring all your Condi over to red, which is usually 2 or 3 players, because it has very high toughness and basically only takes condition damage. So those players will just do that as normal. And then you'll have your power deeps go to blue and green. If you are super fast DPS, you will probably find that you have already gotten the blue guardian down to like 0, and you're just kind of waiting to CC it before the green guardian even gets his electrical butt over there. But otherwise, that is a good chance, like Cryptic was talking about last week. If you have anything that increases your damage based on how many things it's hitting or anything like that, then feel free to wait until the green guardian gets over there to use it if you can. The split phases are kind of medium in length. You can generally, some professions will be able to keep doing their rotation as normal. Others might have to hold some things back. Keep in mind it also depends on how you're splitting. If for some reason you're pulling all three together, different things might apply. If you were splitting 3 different ways instead of 2, again, try to adjust your rotation. The only other thing is the break bar. Some bosses have very interesting mechanics surrounding their break bar. VG is not one of them. You can continue doing your DPS normally during the break bar. VG does not take reduced damage while it is active. The only thing it affects is the fact that VG will refuse to move when the break bar is up. So those are the general boss related things. For Merrick, you can go for it.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. So basically, Veil Guardian is a phased fight, right, as we know. So all of the things that we talked about on Tuesday definitely apply. The basic philosophy of trying to cut out the waste and try to get any cast times or pre-cast that you get done before a boss is targetable all apply here. Definitely is important. It's good to know, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't know about Veil Guardian, is that he has the lowest toughness or armor value, really, of any boss in the game. So he takes additional damage from power. Obviously, if you can play a power damage build in Veil Guardian, it is ideal. It is, of course, offset by the fact that there is the Red Guardian in VG that must be dealt damage to by conditions. So you have to have 2 Condi builds in the group. But if you've got those 2 covered, your job is to try to find your biggest, baddest power DPS build in the game, because it's going to be doing way more damage than Condi. So it's very important. When you first start the fight with Veil Guardian, a lot of the things that I was talking about on Tuesday come into play. Basically, this is an interesting one. Unlike Sabbatha or Samurag or Gorseval, like I was giving examples of last time, where you basically start here and you want to run into the group, right? Run into the boss with the stack, trying to do range damage as you're running, because the moment that you're in combat, that's when Arc DPS starts to care about your DPS ratio. In this case, it's kind of unique. We're staying here and someone's going to pull the boss and the boss is going to run to us. This makes it a little different, right? Normally we want to be chucking things ahead, maybe throwing some wells ahead of us, and hoping to encounter the boss relatively close to where the boss actually is. In this case, it is a toughness-based tanking mechanic, which means that the tank and the stack are mostly going to be staying right around the edge, and the boss is going to be running to you. So you don't really want to be dropping any wells, any bits of damage that are going to stay and continue to do their damage wherever they were placed, whether that is a literal well in terms of like a Reaper, or a trap like a Guardian, or even dropping a spinny sword, what is that called, Sword of Justice or whatever. Anything like that that's going to continually do damage in the spot that you drop it is going to be wasted. So what we want to do is try as best as we can to capitalize on damage while the boss is coming in. That's going to be very different depending on what your class is, but this is where I really want you to start thinking about that in your head. What is the best way I can reduce the waste, reduce the cast times, or set things up ahead of time, maybe reorient my rotation so that I can start doing some damage while it's moving in. Identify what that is, whatever the most damage is. Mine is really weird, and I've actually worked on it intently on a bunch of different builds. So I can give you my example for Reaper. For example, some of you guys have maybe seen me stream Reaper lately, where I actually swap to a staff and drop some traps, or whatever they call it, marks ahead of time between me and the boss. I can drop those marks and then swap off of the staff, and as soon as I engage the boss, he's going to run straight into those marks, but I don't have to commit to having that staff on me for the entire fight. Those marks have been dropped. I now replaced it with Greatsword, and it's good to go. It's just free damage. So there's definitely that. I also go into Lich form, and I can stay with the stack and try to get boons, right? Because the stack usually incorporates the boon givers. Sadly, most of the time they're not up DPSing with us as the boss is running to try to get some extra boons. So what I do is I usually stand back, I go into Lich form, and this is one of the only examples of when I'll just pew pew, press 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 in Lich form while it's running over. It's going to hit my my marks along the way, and then by the time it gets to maybe about here, right? It's running from here Actually, VG is pretty far. It's something like this. He's going to start running. He's going to hit my traps about here. And by the time he gets to like maybe here, I'm starting to channel the precast for my the summoned bone minions. And as soon as he gets from here to here, I'm out of Lich form and doing my big rotation. I have wasted 0 time and I've done as much damage as humanly possible to the boss while he's moving over. This is definitely something that you should try to consider. On peak chrono, it's going to be very different. A lot of my skills are ranged. There's nothing to say that I can't do my entire intro while it's moving over. So the whole continuous split rotation, or if you've done the what do you call it, the streamlined version of the peak chrono that I have taught in the past, there's so many ranged attacks because you're throwing phantasms as it's moving over. That one's much easier. Cryptic, for example, plays Hollow. I've played Hollow with him. In that situation, it gets a little trickier because whenever you're basically starting at the stack or starting at the boss, and the stack with every boon is over here, you're having to make a trade. Is it worth it to attack the boss while it's running over and maybe lose a little bit of boons as I'm running over, and then when I get here, start my regular rotation? The truth is the answer is probably yes. Getting boons is great, but doing 0 damage for 10 seconds or something like that is actually devastating to your overall damage. So trying to best be able to formulate what skills you should be using, how to do damage on the move, is really going to apply to Veil Guardian. I would say that like my Scrapper or my Reaper, Power Chrono, certain things that can do damage really nicely while moving tend to serve better in that build, in that fight, especially by the time you get to the 3rd phase and you're rotating around the arena. That's definitely a big one. The last thing that I want to get into, and I'm going to be using this as a metric for the entire event tonight. Every single boss needs to have little tricks and tips for how best to do damage, but also mitigating mechanics and what skills you have in order to avoid having to do something that someone else might have to do is the best way to get bonus damage. So if I'm standing right here and a bunch of teleport circles appear around us in VG, that's of course going to be some of the biggest lost damage possible. If you see somebody get teleported, you lost an enormous amount of damage. I mean, forget about it. That's huge, right? You might die out there even. It's going to be very, very bad. The other thing that I see a lot of people do is panic and dodge backwards and then run back in, right? Like this is going to be at least 2 or 3 seconds of missed damage. That's also really drastic. You heard me give a speech last week or on Tuesday about the biggest paradigm shift in being able to do good damage comes from no longer panically reacting to mechanics as they come up. Oh crap, I'm gonna get teleported, and then dodge or screw up and dodge into someone else's teleport and lose damage, but instead calmly predicting mechanics. So I'm like, okay, I've done my little opener. I know that teleport circles are about to happen. All right, and I'm gonna step over about that much. I'm gonna strafe instead of dodge and continue my rotation. That's the best way to avoid teleport circles, and if you can do it calmly, it's really good. But sometimes skills themselves can allow you to mitigate mechanics. I'm being really detailed about this now because I'm going to apply this philosophy, this classification to every boss that we go through. In VG, something like a Blurred Frenzy, for example, can actually fully mitigate every teleport circle underneath you. It is a duration evade, which means that it will evade for a full 1 second. Doesn't matter if you get hit by 1 thing or 1,000 things in that 1 second, it will actually evade them all. And Blurred Frenzy can make you evade teleport circles. So once you get more comfortable and you see them coming, you know that it's going to be a thing, any sort of force evade is going to be able to do that. So a peak chrono is one of those things where you'll have a tool to mitigate mechanics like that. And there's going to be a lot of those to come. Thank you for that follow, dude. Welcome to the stream, man. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I would just add that
Queer Estimo, appreciate it, bro.
Well, I was gonna say 3, but it has 2 phases and then it dies, right? Each one of those, think of it as the fight is ending, because you really don't need any of your skills for, you know, especially if you're a power DPS. Khan needs a little different, but especially if you're a power DPS.
Oh my gosh.
I'm Danny Boy 909 has gifted 5 subs to
the Guardians, the
viewers.
Green and Blue Guardian. So same thing we talked about last week, change your rotation, pay attention to, in this case, not just, is the boss dying, but the actual percentage. When it gets close to that 66 and that 33, or, whatever the phase percentages are, you need to start, for any boss, you need to start changing your rotation and just dump skills into them.
Yeah, that is incredible advice, and that's true for everything ever. Every single end of a phase should absolutely be, as long as you know that the next phase is going to be a time where you can recuperate, right? That's when you should use everything. Cryptic's right. At the end of every SFTA benchmark, if you look at Snowcrow's benchmark, they have their written rotation, the loop you're supposed to follow, etc., etc. But if you actually watch them performing it on the golem, they break their own rules. They cheat, or they skip, or they omit, or they skip to a certain portion of the rotation that's going to be the highest amount of damage at the very end. Because why are you going to hold on to anything else? Get rid of all of it. Do all that damage, because as soon as that golem's dead, that's going to report that final number, and that's going to give them their benchmark. The same is true for every single phase in a fight. In Veil Guardian, as soon as he walks away, he does that at very specific percentages, right? 66%, we know he's going to face. 33%, we know he's going to face. So that's where that getting the ability to look up and see the HP of a target, knowing ahead of time that that's what's going to happen, that a phase is going to end, definitely gives you the ability to make a different decision. Like, oh, he's about to end, I got to get this out. Do skip to my biggest damage skill, even if it's not directly in line in my rotation. Or, and since I'm on chrono, this is a great example, right? Say I'm doing all my stuff, I've got only one charge left of Power Spike, right? And maybe I've only got 2 clones, right? But he's about to phase. Oh shoot, he's at 67%. Right, so now it's time to blow the last charge of my mantra and shatter everything. Why not? There's no reason not to. By the next time you fight Veil Guardian, you will have all your shatters back. You can just charge your mantra of pain, ready to go. Everything that you have just unloaded will be ready to go for the next time. So getting into that mentality, knowing ahead of time when a boss is going to phase, and then trying your best to capitalize on the little time you have left, is going to really, really pay off. I showed Power Spike being a mantra, right? You never want to use the last charge of a mantra. Everybody knows that. But with Chrono, the moment you click it, look, it's already castable again. So you really don't have to even have a long phase after that. You can throw the last charge of your Power Spike every single phase, or every single CC of Samurag, for example, because it's always going to be back up. The only thing that I would give that is a little bit of another note in terms of mantras is, if you do that with Firebrand, 2 other things need to be considered. One is that mantra is going to have a solid 20 to 30 second cooldown after that, so you have to wait to be able to cast it again. So you have to know if that period of time is going to be long enough for you to get it back between fighting the boss again. In VG, by the way, it is, so feel free to use it. That's perfectly fine. But the other thing is that it stacks a bunch of burning. It's not a bunch of damage all at once. So don't use it at 67%. Use that last charge at like 69, 70%. Give yourself a few percentages worth of those burn ticks, because the damage is not done all up front. And if you use it at the last second, it's not going to get a chance to tick.
Another thing is, don't forget, even if Alacrity is not a little bit lacking, just in general, the mushrooms on the corners can give you a reduced skill cooldown. So don't forget to pick those up when you're going to kill the Guardians. Can help you get your skills back to where they need to be for the start of the next phase. When the other thing to really VG is a really good practice for this, because if you're skipping greens, the first 2 he's not going to be moving, but in the last one he's moving. You're doing that race car. In most groups you're going to be doing that race car around the NASCAR around the center. That is really great practice for being able to do all your skills on the move. And we talked about practicing that here in SFTA, turning the golem on, moving and chasing him around and stuff. But if you're someone that is not quite used to predicting the placement of your skills, where the boss is going to end up, usually some of that's on the tank's movement, but the more you run a group, the more consistent you'll get with how the boss and the tank are going to be moving the boss. As you practice, a good DPS is going to be very consistent when placing. Solosaur is another one I talk about all the time. One of the main differences between me as a renegade on Solosaur and other renegades is that every time the boss moves, I'm still applying DPS. And it's not just, important thing to remember, it's not just placing the skill where you think the boss is going to end up. That's like 50% of it. The other thing is making sure that you're staying with the boss. Like Renegade, as an example, a lot of classes, you know, have abilities like this. I'm pulsing damage here with Embrace Darkness, right? Like, there's no, unless a wall's about to hit me, there's no reason for me to leave the boss. So I see the tank run ahead. I don't need to join him. I can just tag along. And the same thing with, you know, VG. You see the tank move ahead to go pull VG with him. You know, keep staying here. You don't need to run ahead and stand next to the tank. That's his job to move ahead. You keep doing your damage.
That's good advice and true of a lot of different bosses. And sometimes this goes counter to maybe what your commander or tank is saying. And it's kind of, it's always a weird thing. Like a good example of where it, you know, doesn't super duper matter is, well, so Veil Guardian is fine, KC, certain things like the tank is going to move it to where it needs to be. And it has this mentality of like, okay, everyone get where I am because we need to get the boss over here. But it's only going to follow the tank. Which means that your job is to basically stick on the boss, however slow he takes to get to the point that it's going to be stopped at. You should be with them the entire time. That's definitely a big part of being able to keep up damage. I'd also like everyone to sort of look at your skills, look at your class, identify the things that are really good and easy to do while on the move. Try to identify those skills that can be done while moving and be able to be done freely. For example, if you have a bomb, as an engineer, you can just drop that as you're moving. That's decent damage with enormous cleave. You can sidestep around teleports. It doesn't really matter. It's a decent damage skill to keep using. Having to use grenades as you're running can kind of be a little bit more annoying, but you can do that as well. Sword auto attacks as a sword is not so bad. But like Cryptic said, the goal should either be to predict ahead of time where the boss is going to land and then throw those well skills where he's going to be. And do that in combination with saving them until it's possible that the boss is going to be able to walk into them. I can't tell you how often I see a Dragon Hunter or a Firebrand moving with Veil Guardian and dropping like Scepter 2 right on top of it. And it just walks right out of it. It gets maybe a hit or two before the boss is completely out of that range. It actually would behoove you to save it just a minute until it gets to the stopping location. Remember that Veil Guardian is made up of pie slices, and a tank is always going to be moving the boss intentionally to the edge of that pie slice and stopping. It's going to only stop for a bit, right? And it's going to move again. But every time it moves, its goal is to move to the next edge of a pie slice and then stop there. So you can always predict, at least in Veil Guardian, where your tank is going to be headed and try to throw that AoE in that sort of direction. And what I mean by like throwing it ahead of time is like if I know that the standard kitty golem is going to be going to this location, by the time it gets to like here, right, I know that it's going to definitely be at arrow by the time my cast is finished. But I still don't want to be casting it with snap to target or directly on top of where it's going to be. It's going to walk out. So what I would want to do is something like this, right? It's moving from circle to arrow, and I'm dropping it there. So it's going to hit it the moment that it's there, but it's going to also spend its entire rest of its movement getting to arrow, still within that AoE. So like that awareness when you're dropping well-based damage or persistent damage dropped in a specific location is going to go a long way.
Yeah, it's great. Sorry, go
I just wanted to add on a couple different things for VG that I forgot about. So one thing is that for people who need to flank on VG, which will generally be pretty common because people prefer power classes on VG, VG turns around when the break bar unlocks. So if you're a class who does need to flank, do keep that in mind, that he will always turn around toward the group, lift his arm up into the air that is the tell, and start shooting the AoEs. So if you're really anal and like really need to flank, then try to just scooch around him. He does have a fairly small hitbox, so it can be difficult, but keep that in mind for flanking. Another thing is, it's kind of a specific thing, but it applies for 3 different builds, at least technically 4, I guess. For Dragon Hunters and Firebrands, Condi Firebrands, Condi Quickbrands, Power Dragon Hunter, Power Guardian, you all take a trait called Renewed Justice that recharges your F1 when you kill something. Some people, it's kind of debated over like what actually triggers this. You have people I think have debated that the thing has to give you experience, which is not like it's not uncommon, but it doesn't apply to every single mob in raids. And other people have said that, yeah, it probably just bugs sometimes. But whatever the case, there are certain things that should trigger that trait, and that's very important because F1 either way is a huge part of your damage on those builds. The guardians during the splits will refresh it, so feel free to use your tome, even you're afraid like, oh, my tome F1 isn't going to be up for VG. It will reset. Just do not be in the tome when it happens. Same with the Dragon Hunter. Just tether it with your F1 before it dies. It will reset instantly. You don't have to worry about that, and that's just an overall damage increase that you will help kill the ads faster.
And two other things to keep in mind is one, if you're struggling for like if you are put on a Condi class, obviously obviously most Condi classes are not going to do well on VG. It's just the nature of the fight, but there are two that can kind of get away with it. You're never going to beat a really good power DPS player. They're just going to have the natural advantage there. But Hybrid Soul Beast and Firebrand can pull some decent numbers on the boss itself, despite the fact that you're technically more Condi focused than you are power. So just two things to keep in mind if you feel like you're trying to figure out a class, your group puts you on Condi all the time on VG and you still want to do some good numbers. Those are two classes that can do it. And the other thing is we talked about like skills skills that require an upkeep to maintain, like traits and stuff. Big example is the Ferocity one on Engineer. When you are fighting your VG splits and you're fighting the Guardians, you can obviously keep your Ferocity stacks up on that, drop your bombs, your grenades, whatever the case may be. Almost 99% of the time, unless you're in a very good group that is coordinated and knows what they're doing, or you're pulling all three together, something like that, you are going to kill the power ones, blue and green, before you get to clones. There's another example. Blue and green before you get to red, before red dies. Even if red's health goes away, Condi classes don't have great CC, so they'll probably be CCing it even if they manage to get the health down before you guys finish off yours. So what that ends up doing is now you're not able to stack on anything. Like VG hasn't respawned, and when he does respawn, he's invulnerable for a little bit anyway. And the red one's too far away, and if you go over there, you might die, or you may kill someone else. The red orbs, what are they called again? I keep forgetting.
Seekers?
There you go. Yeah, the Seekers. The Seekers are totally damageable, and you can stack all your stuff off on them. So when I'm playing Hollow, I'm throwing grenades at them. If you are a bomb Hollow, you can drop bombs if one of them's close to you. Bombs have a huge radius, as Merrick showed before. So feel free to go ahead and get your explosion stacks or anything else that you need to stack. You can make clones off them as well. So do whatever you got to do to keep up that kind of trait or skill-based, class-based upkeeps.
Yeah, it's a good rule in general for engineers. I think a lot of people sort of lose track of being able to capitalize on that in between burn phases. Keeping up those stacks is very, very important. But I do the same thing all the time as a Reaper. I will take the time to target a Seeker or some ad in KC or whatever, use my skills to build up life force again. Like there's a lot of different classes that do that. Usually there's something that you can be doing that sort of helps you better prep for the next burn phase, even if it's just making sure that you take the time to weapon swap to the right weapon that you want to be on, or attunement swap, or whatever it is that you have to do. Just sort of resetting yourself to be able to perform that burst damage again, just as if you were starting the boss immediately. This also plays in with supports. It's not just DPS. I often see people who play supports think to themselves, this phase doesn't really matter. I'm not going to waste my quickness, right? I'm not going to spend quickness during this phase. I often get asked at times like in Sabir when you're going up in the jumping puzzle, like, should I be doing quickness? I mean, different people are going to feel differently about that. It doesn't really matter. But the one thing that is really important all the time is to keep up alacrity. Alacrity is always important, making sure you reassess your build, where you're at, what skills are off cooldown, what skills are on cooldown, when you're going to be, where you're going to be in your rotation to begin again, is going to be different based on that. So make sure that when a new phase is about to begin, you took the time in that previous phase to reset yourself, whatever that is, recharging mantras, getting life force, keeping up explosion stacks on hollow, whatever it happens to be. But then also try to stay near your stack, get that alacrity, and make sure that all of your skills are recharging as fast as possible during that downtime so that they're ready to go again when you're beginning.
Nice. Okay. So a couple things. We just spent like over half an hour on VG, so I'm gonna probably try and force us through.
This is going to be a 9-hour stream, just letting everyone know.
Yeah, so let's not spend half an hour on future bosses, but I think it's okay with VG because a lot of the stuff that we mentioned on VG with like split phases, with anticipating the movement of bosses, things like that will be applicable for future bosses, and we shouldn't really have to keep repeating. So. But in any case, moving on to Gorsible. Gorsible, a lot of people are going to be using Power on Gorsible, Power or Condi, both fine. IMO, obviously you have relatively short phases depending on your DPS, but the worse your DPS is, as usual, the better Condi DPS tends to be. The big thing on Gorsible, everyone knows, everyone loves, is his tantrum, ground pound, whatever you want to call it. When he starts pounding his fists on the ground, he starts creating the goop patterns, and you start taking a whole lot of damage. So Gorsible gains a retaliation-like effect called Vivid Echo. It is not a perfect damage reflection in that it's not like reflecting all the damage you do back onto you. It is fixed packets of damage. It's normally around 700 to 800 damage that you're taking. This triggers on direct hits. It does not trigger on ticks of Condis. That's very important to keep in mind. So if you're doing, for instance, a slow break on Gorsible, Condi DPS might be a little bit better. Condi DPSers generally, this is not always the case, tend to attack a little bit slower than the power DPSers you might be using instead. So, and once you get those Condis on there, you can be attacking slower and just let your Condis do the work for you, which is nice. The retaliation damage can sneak up on you. It is... I can only repeat this so many times. It is always a DPS loss to go down. Do not greed yourself into down state. It is a terrible idea. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, but like I have to do X, Y, Z. No, you don't. If worse comes to worse, you could absolutely stop attacking. I know it's a huge damage decrease, but if you are sitting at 500 health, don't keep auto-attacking yourself to death. That's the biggest damage decrease there is. And it just wastes everyone else's time trying to get you up as well. So be very careful with that retail damage. It will sneak up on you no matter what you are playing. There are things you can do to make yourself not die to that retail damage. Some things, AED. Obviously, this saves you from going into down state, so don't pop it when you're at full health. It doesn't do anything. Pop it when you're at that 1000 health, and then watch it do its magic as it saves you from almost certain death. On a Dragon Hunter, you can use Litany of Wrath. It's one of the most powerful heal skills in the game. Litany of Wrath allows you to continue breezing through your rotation. You don't have to do anything different for the next 7 seconds of your life. You can continue doing everything as normal. Do you want to? Not necessarily. A lot of times people will be saving like damage boosts and party-wide damage, things like that, for after the CC naturally, because other classes might still be killing themselves. So yeah, it really depends on your group. If you know you're about to get one wolf pack when that CC ends, then please don't kill your burst during the CC. You have on a Weaver aquatic stance you can take. If you are a newer Weaver, you might not be attacking fast enough to really get the healing from your heal skill. Aquatic stance works sort of similarly to Litany of Wrath. It's like mini stacks. You have charges of it. You can use one. As soon as you notice it runs out, you can use it again, and that will help save you for the break bar in groups with super slow CC, or if you're just not the best Weaver in the world. I'm sure other builds have definitely things you can do to mitigate that damage, but that's going to be one of the biggest things. It's just not killing yourself to retail. It has more split phases like normal. What I said before about the Radiant trait, it will proc on the charged souls, so feel free to try and kill them as fast as possible. Traps at the end that will definitely kill your damage if you get trapped. It used to be that you could evade them, and you used to have other mitigation methods. A somewhat recent in the span of rating patch changed it so that absolutely nothing works to avoid those traps if you are standing in them. The only thing you can do is not be standing in an AoE. The best thing to do is just to sidestep while you continue attacking. If you dodge, you're stuck in that dodge animation. You can't do anything to get out of it, and you may be dodging through someone else's trap or end up in someone else's trap. So as soon as you see them spawn, just sidestep, just walk out of them. You can't block, you can't distort, you can't evade. I promise, we've all tried it. We've wanted to greed through them, but you can't. So just walk out of them. I think generally that's the only things I have. So Eric and Cryptic.
Wait. But getting egged is a heat reset. Omega DPS increase Hollowsmith.
Not usually. It's not a DPS. if you're overheating, I don't know about PBM. Probably it's still DPS loss in PBM. But if you're overheating in ECSU, obviously you don't want to overheat. That's a huge DPS loss. Get egged. Like, it'll be a DPS increase if you if you get egged and you are immediately broken out. It's definitely going to be a DPS increase if you've overheated. That would be the only thing, and it's better than going down in that situation, because you're probably not going to get rezzed if you go down on the final phase. I will say, as far as like the uses of AD, AED, I mean, if you don't trust your group, obviously, use AED if you think you're about to die. But I mean, you should use it if you think you're about to die in general. But AED does heal you like 5,000 health, regardless of whether you went down or not. And it is a really good tool to use for Scholar of Time if you have a moment to just pop it and it doesn't interrupt your rotation. Generally, as soon as Gorsiful starts doing his ground pound attack and there's all that retail, like Phoenix said, some of the big things that kill people on that are consistent multi-hit stuff like laser discs for Hollow, or the traps for Dragon Hunter, or Blurred Frenzy, I guess, for P-Chronos. Things to do a lot of hits in a very short amount of time. Axe 5 for Rangers. So that kind of stuff you want to be careful with. Try to get that out of the way before he does the ground pound, and if you do it before and then you guys are fast breaking, or even if you're slow breaking, by the time that stuff comes back off cooldown, he will either about to be broken or have long been broken, as far as the CC. When it comes to like AED's uses on that, usually what I do is if my health gets to half, I will pop AED, because with retail and with the way damage works, you can go down very quickly from that point. And if you don't go down, great. If you do, whatever, you'll get your health instantly back. But it's just nice. AED's like 5,000 health can really get you closer or back into your Scholar uptime, which is a big deal in Gorsiful. You're taking a lot of chip damage from that like ground pound stuff, and if you're solo healing, it's tough to keep that Scholar uptime.
Yep, I would say there's a lot of good tips. Some of the ones we've already talked about apply to Gorsifal. So, Gorsifal starts in the middle of the arena, so you're going to be doing range damage as you run in. Try to throw as much as you can. You're going to be fighting Gorsifal Unless you stealth in, which a lot of groups do when they're like really organized statics and they're trying for really high speed runs. Most of the time that's not going to be the case. So he's going to aggro your group as you're running in, but he's only going to make it from where he's at here to like here, right? He doesn't go very far. So as you run in, you can know to throw some wells, drop whatever you need to do, get some damage that's ranged, all the things we talked about before. He also phases multiple times, so you can know all of the phasing stuff we talked about earlier, getting the damage out right before the end of a phase, very important. You'll have some time to rebuild whatever you lost along the way with the spirits as you're doing that. Mitigating the mechanics in this fight really come down to the retail, as we were talking about before, and this is going to be just up to you to either decide on a class that works well with this, because some are going to be a little harder, right? Phoenix brought up using the DH heal, which heals you for a percentage of the damage that you do, completely nullifying any of the retaliation damage that you would be taking. So that's perfectly fine, but you have to do it within the amount of time that heal is. I forget how long it is. If you're in a pug or people are not using their CC, which is pretty often the case, it's not as fast as you want it to be, then you're going to have to make different decisions, because as a DH, you have very little HP, several attacks that are going to be hitting very quickly, so you have to be really intentional about the decisions you make in terms of what skills you use. I oftentimes will bring something to Gores when I'm out pugging that I just don't have to worry about this with. You know, Reaper hits so freaking slow, you couldn't kill yourself in a million years. Unless you're pressing 4 in Shroud, there's no way to kill yourself. You guys know I also play Scrapper, that's hilarious, you can't hurt yourself no matter what. But making decisions about that can make your life easier depending on what kind of group you go into. And then if you're just going to be in a group and you don't really know what it is, you really have to get familiar with your character so that you know what skills do multi-hits. Remember, as Phoenix described very well, it does not reflect the amount of damage done back to you. Each individual hit will reflect a set amount of damage back to you. So a lot of little hits or a lot of big hits, doesn't matter. A lot of hits are going to just do a ton of damage back to you. So adjusting your rotation so that you can continue to do some damage during that phase, but not kill yourself, is very important. I think we all sort of laugh whenever we see a Weaver or an Ellie of some kind in the group. I think I always get scared for them. Elementalists have a lot of rapid fire attack hits, have very little HP, and do not have the benefit of Litany of Wrath in order to heal themselves, or even AED. So they're going to be a little bit of a tougher choice, but in general, you just have to be really, really careful about what you drop in that moment. I've had times where I don't feel like I can comfortably even turn off my auto attack, and I know that I'm about to die, and I'll just force myself to dodge a couple of times just to stop auto attacking for a second, or turn backwards, you know, like something so that you stop hurting yourself until you get that extra big heal. Also, being able to deal with the oils or the black tar that you see underneath the boss as you rotate in and out. Having a better awareness of what your skill's cleave range is, or being able to use range skills, can allow you to take a step back, continue your rotation without having to stop. Of course, like as a Chronomancer, you have so many of these phantasms, right? You could just chuck them and then run back in. So like an awareness of ranged skills you can swap to, or if you are one of those two classes I brought, like Reaper has such a big cleave range, you can actually stand outside of the tar and still do really good damage. So it really just depends. It'll behoove you to look over your skills and make sure you're making good choices for retail. Otherwise, it is a phased fight, so the precasts all still apply. And I think that's pretty much it. Gores is usually pretty straightforward.
Yep. Any other?
Yeah, Eyeless. Weaver's scary, man. And Tempest as well.
Okay, moving on to Sabbatha then. Interesting things on Sabbatha. Flame Wall is probably a big one. I know a lot of people, they freak out about the Flame Wall. They think they have to constantly be moving away from it, things like that. So the flame wall is always going in the same direction. When you see that arrow telegraph on the ground, all you have to do is sidestep it to the left. And then you have until it comes back around. It does, like, it's a little more than a 360, so you'll have to move a bit, but basically the ideal thing to do is you just want to sidestep to the left for that reticle, and then, like, as you see it start to go around, then you want to go off to the right a little bit, and then you should be safe there. I see a lot of people that are kind of like, they feel like it's going to catch up to them, and they're kind of constantly running around it. It doesn't go that fast if you're in the center. If you're on the outside, it's a different story. But yeah, don't be afraid of that. I see, like, so many people just stop their rotations entirely, and you're like, I have to run. You don't. You can continue doing your DPS-y things. Another weird, interesting thing, if you kill yourself doing this, don't at me, but the flame wall extends from the front of her hitbox outward. It does not go behind her at all. It does not cover her entire hitbox. It's just that her hitbox is fairly small. So you can be in her hitbox when the flame wall is active, but you cannot be in the front of her hitbox. This is important if you need to be in the hitbox for any reason, or if you have movement skills or anything like that. But I promise you, you can inch into the hitbox for some of your skills while the flame wall is active. Just be in the back of it. Obviously, the front is where the flame wall is coming out. Just try not to be close to it. You might clip it somewhere. Weird things can happen. So just be careful about that. Another big thing on Sabbath is probably a lot of DPSers are the ones doing cannons. If you do cannons a lot, if you expect to be doing cannons a lot, something I encourage you to do is to figure out what it takes to kill a cannon. That's where a lot of people, I think, go wrong, is they don't know really what they have to use, or like how much damage they're using. And some of you don't do cannons that much. You might be backing up. You might, there are a lot of different situations. That's fine. Just use your skills until it dies. But if you're doing it a lot, try and figure out what are just a few skills you can use to take it down. You don't need to like do an entire rotation or opener or whatever on the cannon to destroy it by any means. Another thing is, if you're a Condi class on Sabbatha, you do not have to, and it's something I used to see all the time, is you'd have a Condi class, they'd do a cannon, that's fine, but then they'd stay up there until the cannon died. You're a Condi class, your conditions tick. That's the entire point of what you are doing. So if you are a Condi build and you are doing a cannon, you can leave it early. Do not leave it too early. Like, I've seen widely varying things. If you look at, for instance, Diaxon doing it on a Condi Berserker in like a former ARP, you can see that he was leaving the cannon at 50% health. It was a little insane. If you're newer, you're not used to doing a cannon, you don't know what exactly the 13 stacks of burning that's on it, you don't know how much damage that's going to do. That's perfectly cool, but you never have to stay with it the entire time. On a Condi builds, normally if I was doing it on a Condi, I'd probably leave it around 20 to 30% to be safe. But yeah, just don't make the mistake either way of staying there the entire time or leaving way too early when you don't know what your Condis can actually do. Something not a lot of people probably know, and it's really not super noteworthy, but the final boss, Carta, that's the one with the flamethrower, she takes additional incoming condition damage. So, if you're a Condi build, just really play up your all DPS on Carta and try and take her down quickly, because you do work there.
Who in chat knew this? Anybody in chat actually know this? I mean, I knew this, but only because Phoenix told me a couple of weeks ago. I legit had no idea that was true. Super random. That Carta, the final boss, the final mini boss in Sabbatha, the 25% boss, takes bonus Condi damage. Is this common knowledge? Am I just late to the party? Holy crap.
Yeah, I think that's about all I have generally on Sabbatha, so you guys can take it away.
Narsen, you knew that? What? No one tells me anything. Okay, so I wanted to just give an actual physical demonstration of what Phoenix was saying, because it is so important. Please know this, whether you're DPS or not. If you're standing right here with the stack, and the stack should be together on Sabbatha, and the flame wall spawns right here, you like my very colorful flame wall, instead of like panically running around the outside of the boss the whole time, you really don't need to do that. Remember that the indicator for the flame wall is an arrow on the floor. This arrow will extend outward from KC to the edge of the arena. Looks very much like the same indicator you would see for Cairn if Cairn does the arm swing, the long arm of justice. Basically, you get to see the indicator first. It is not actually doing damage while it is just the arrow indicator. It only starts doing damage or hurting you once it becomes a flame wall. So if you're right here and you see the arrow just going like this, you've passed it. And then what she means by going over and then moving a little bit to the right is that if I were to move back here again, I'm now safe. That's the only movement I had to do. Go like this, and then I go like this. That's it. Remember that the flame wall, wherever it begins, will make a full 360-degree revolution and stop exactly where it began. Which means if you see the arrow and you just step over it, and then the flame wall continues, right? It's going around, and you just step right back to where you were, it's going to stop right here again. So as you get more comfortable with it, you can absolutely rely on a lack of great drastic movement, which, as we all know, movement is typically the enemy of good DPS. So the other thing is, Phoenix is right. It doesn't actually touch any of her hitbox. You can absolutely stay inside of the hitbox, spin to win inside, and not take any damage. It's just a matter of not getting hit by this flame wall. But as a DPS, the next thing that I really want to drive home for everyone is that you can always be certain that the next time bomb, where you become a bomb and blow up your friends, is going to happen immediately after the flame wall rotation has finished. You can absolutely predict that to be true every single time. So while she's spinning around in a circle with flame wall, you know for sure she's not going to do a time bomb, which means that you can be in the hitbox freely, knowing you will not get one because she will never do them while she's doing the flame wall, but she will do them right afterwards. So if you don't want that bomb, spin to win, but the second that arrow or the flame wall is coming back to where it began, back out and max melee. That's a little greedy way to hopefully not get you the time bomb if you don't want it. So just make sure that that's how you treat flame walls in general. Obviously, it's also another boss where we're going to run in from the outside, so augmenting your rotation to throw your range skills ahead of you. Very important as you're running in, because remember, Sabbatha's maybe the worst offender of this in the entire game. You are put in combat from so far away from Sabbatha. Very far. There's a really long, awkward run before you can actually do any melee damage. So this is a really important fight to augment your rotation to be able to do that with. It's also a heavily phased fight, so any damage that you could do at the very end right before it phases is important. And then getting ready to do some precasts again before Sabbatha comes back, also important. And again, this comes from knowledge of the fight itself. 75% Sabbatha is going to leave the platform and replace herself with an ad or with a henchman. Every henchman, once it gets dropped to exactly 25%, will bring the next boss. So you can know for sure that it's actually going to come back at that moment. So you can start some precasts, get ready to do that big damage, knowing for sure that Sabbath is going to come back right at that 25%. And then the name of the game just becomes cleave. Make sure that you just cleave. Everything you should be doing is cleaving until that henchman, of course, is dead, with the exception of Captain CC guy, who Knuckles, you might want to pay a little bit more attention to him. But I'll even do things like if you happen to get bombed, remember, there's no excuse to ever not do damage. This is the mentality of trying to squeeze out as much damage as humanly possible. If you do get the time bomb, what that means is you could be running away, dropping ranged attack skills, and then running back with more ranged attack skills ready to go. So like if I'm a hollow smith or something, I'll swap to grenades. I'll throw a couple of grenades, blow up, and then turn around, and then I will do like sword 3 to leap back into the stack. If I'm a chrono and I get it, sometimes I'll do something funny like leave a sword 3, do some phantasms, and then blink back to the group, right? I've replaced myself with the clone as soon as that bomb has blown up. So these are the little clutch things that are going to save little bits, little seconds of no damage. What you want to avoid are any moments of no damage. Sometimes mechanics will force you to do less damage, but you can always do something to better facilitate doing damage or getting ready to do damage again once you get back.
Yeah, I think Merrick summed it up pretty well. Big thing is trying to make sure you don't get the time bomb. So just remember, don't be, you know, your your Rangers have the Rangers and DHs have a tough time with this because they get sucked into the hitbox with, you know, the DHs like to be in the hitbox and Rangers the short axe 5, and it's very easy to end up being the furthest over on the stack and getting it. You just too busy trying to get that max damage, and you're not paying attention to where you need to be positioned. So just watch your positioning, try your best. You can avoid most of the time bombs if you're really on point. Obviously, in a pre-organized group in a static, it may be tougher because most people that are really focused on trying to get good DPS are going to be doing it, so you'll all be competing. But in a pug, it's pretty easy to avoid most of them. Yeah. Other than that, I think Merrick got... Oh, if you're cannon, if you're a DPS, you put on a cannon, try your best to get cannon 2. In most groups that you'll be in, cannon 2 ends up being less time away from Sabbatha, which means more DPS for you.
True. Oh yeah, Eyeless is right. Bombs can also be blocked. It's very true. If you see that a bomb is not leaving the group and it's going to blow you up, if you're a firebrand, for example, you can give Aegis to you and your entire subgroup, negating that explosion entirely. If you don't have access to that, but you only have access to something like Sword 4 here, you can block that explosion. Get a clone out of it, even. So, you know, sometimes if your group is failing mechanics and you have to mitigate that mechanic in order to do more damage or take less damage, you know, using your skills to facilitate that will help a lot. Remember, as a power build, it is always true. If you're taking damage, you're losing damage because you definitely are going to lose your scholar uptime for a certain amount of time.
A couple of more meme things that I wanted to mention real quick that kind of have to do with like the mechanics of how things work in Guild Wars 2. One, if you're a DPS class, Weaver's the one that comes to mind for most people. There are other ones though that have a teleport, like Ride to Lightning, things like that, or any of those kind of movement-based abilities that seem like it's taking you from one place to another. You're not really. It's moving you along a line, and it will, if Sabbatha teleports away, you will go with her. So
I've done it. I've Reaper Shroud 2'd off the cliff to my death because she left, and when she leaves, she goes to a platform that's off the cliff, and you just die.
Yeah, so the game tricks you into thinking that you're doing some kind of cool teleport, and in reality, it's just moving you along the line. All the NPCs in the game work the same way as well, so you will follow them along to your death and be very sad. Another thing, if... lost my train of thought. Sorry, go ahead. I'll pick it back up in a second.
Yeah. Regarding that, I'd also add that when Sabathor teleports away, you can potentially lose your target with those things. So if you have an ability like that, can be very important. Or if make sure you're targeting what you want to. The Sabatha comes back when the enemies are at 25% health or after an exhausting amount of time. But generally, the 25% thing should be what you hit. So yeah, the mini mobs, the lackeys, whatever you want to call them, they move. Sabatha never moves. The lackeys are not like regular bosses in the game. They're like regular mobs where they hate having anyone stand in their hitbox. They do not like their personal space invaded. This is what causes them to scooch away from the center of the platform. So be careful with movement abilities there too, because Sabatha will usually almost always be using her flame wall when she comes back, unless it's still on cooldown. So watch that very carefully there.
Yeah, and got my train of thought back. To clarify, when I said Canon 2, because this has been an issue before, I meant 2.4. Do not just do Canon 2.
We once had a group where we told this guy he was on Cannon 2, and he goes, yeah, Cannon 2. We're like, great, you're 2. He, so-and-so was 1, and you're 2. And he goes, yep, good. And we did the fight, and Cannon 2 was done perfectly every time. But then 4 was never done, and there was never another cannon ever done by this guy for the rest. It took us several pulls to realize he was doing just Cannon 2, and then never another cannon again. It took us a while to establish what was actually happening. I doubt that's a common problem, but it was in this group.
And then the other Mimi thing, Merrick can actually probably sort of kind of demonstrate it, I guess, with that fictional wall that he created there. Every consistent damage in this game is actually not. It's another lie. There's a lot of lies in this game, like projectiles and teleports, but consistent damage is another one. No, as far as bosses, there may be some player skills to do it, I'm not sure, but no NPC or boss skill in the game is actually pulsing out consistent damage, or putting out consistent damage, I should say. What it's really doing is pulsing damage. So any kind of like flame wall or the Adina wall or all of those things, it's all really pulsing damage. And what makes it appear consistent is the frequency at which it's pulsing it out. Flame wall is relatively quick, but as I'm sure you've seen by watching streamers or Merrick, that you can jump the flame wall.
Don't you tell people this. It's a terrible thing for them to know.
You're not actually jumping it. What's really happening is that you are moving through the flame wall at a point where it is not doing any damage.
I'm jumping it.
Okay. It's totally or I shouldn't say feasible to do it. It's plausible to do it. It happens. Adina is less so because the frequency is way higher, so the ability to get through that one while I've seen it happen is less. So
dude,
yeah.
I 360 no scope jump those walls. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, you might actually be jumping those. I don't think that's the damage thing. Oh, and if you see someone downed and they're about to get run over by any kind of consistent damage, again, it's not really consistent, it's pulsing. So Soulless Horror walls, Sabbatha walls, Adina, if you res them, they get the most powerful invulnerability in the game. Nothing can kill them. When you get resed from being from downstate, only like things that permit, like I say permit kill, but only things that are like there's very few things that actually override
Ender's
it.
Echo will pick you up.
Yeah.
He will pick. He does not give a crap about that invulnerability. He will absolutely pick you up.
Yeah, there's very few things that override it in the game. You could probably count all the things on like 2 hands. But the majority of things that you would think would kill you, again, like Soulless Horror walls and stuff like that, will not. You can run straight through them, dance around to them, whatever. You only have the invulnerability for a half a second, but in that half a second, you will be absolutely fine. So res people, it is never too late until they're actually dead.
Guys, we did it. 1 hour. We went through 1 wing.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, as a quick addendum to that, the invulnerability frames are applied when you go down and when you are res. So if you plan on going down on Sabbatha, try and do it right before the wall passes over you, and you should be fine. Don't actually try to do these things. Just try to avoid the damn flame wall normally. Memes aside, that is what will lead to your survival most of the time. But anyway, we can move on to Wing 2 now.
Okay, in Slothazar, just get stealth and drop fixate. Forehead, easy. End of fight.
Easy peasy. Slothazor, big thing. Obviously, the fixate is entirely random on Slothazor. If you are a class that relies on flanking, have you considered either not playing that class or using different runes? Or yeah, that's all I got for you there. It's random. We can't do anything about it. I'm sorry if you're playing Power Soul Beast on Slothazor and you're chosen for fixate 3 times during the fight. Can't do anything about it. Maybe don't play Power Soul Beast if it triggers you that much. That's one big thing. The other big thing is, of course, the CC. So let's talk about how the CC works. Every 20%, and then once again at 10% health, Slothazor will lie down on the spots. When Slothazor starts the lying down animation, it will become invulnerable. The break bar will still not have unlocked, so please don't unleash your CC on it yet. Once it is fully lying down, and its break bar unlocks. At that moment that the break bar unlocks, it will cleanse all the condies it had on it previously. Obviously, the more frequently applied condies, like, you're not going to notice it, it's never going to not have like cripple, because you're going to be putting cripple on it as soon as it goes to sleep anyway. But you can watch any video, I promise you, you will see, Slothazor might have 30 stacks of burning, and then suddenly it will only have 3. It does cleanse all its condies when it goes to sleep. This is why a lot of people will point you to playing power on Slothazor in addition to the shorter phases and all that. And the fact that Condi classes have like no CC in this game. But that's how
True.
that works. It is invulnerable. It takes 0 direct damage, and the condies will tick for 0 damage. Once it falls asleep, you can continue piling those condies on, put more on it. That's all great and fine. They will not tick until it wakes up and it roars. So that's what you need to know as far as that's concerned. I'm not gonna like tell you absolutely must play power. That's not true by any means. Some Condi builds are particularly strong on Slothazor. Condi Firebrand's the one everyone likes to point to. You get a lot of tome resets on this fight if you cleave the Slublings, because those count. So you will be hopefully living in F1 a lot more than you would have been before. As far as the CC goes, Slothazor has a very chunky break bar. It is one of the highest in the game, second only to Gorsable and Samurog, who are tied. It's 4,000. So please use your CC. It's even more important on Slothazor. If Slothazor falls asleep near a field that is about to be covered in poison, anything like that, or it even falls asleep in poison, just use everything you have. I know DPS is very important, but this is one of those fights where deciding not to bring CC skills or deciding not to CC will absolutely lead to a wipe if you ignore those skills. So please CC it. Let's all be happy and get the kill. Unless you're just trying to get a speed kill, then whatever, you shouldn't care and you should just keep GGing. But normally you're actually trying to kill the boss. So please help CC it. Movement's a big thing here. So what Maeric said about VG, what Maeric and Cryptic said, try to know where Sloth is going to move. Sloth does not always move in a great way. I know a lot of the times the one people love to point out is from your first tank spot at the beginning of the cave to like the second one in there. It's very weird. Slothazor will sometimes like do a little like go up against the wall and start walking against the wall for reasons unbeknownst to anyone in this world, aside from the fact that it has weird pathing. Sorry about it. Slothazor's a very random boss in terms of DPS in a lot of ways, but I think that's all I got for you. So Eric and Cryptic, take it away.
Phoenix is absolutely right about the CC. The more CC you have as a group, the faster you'll phase it, and the higher your final number will be. But the only thing I have to say about Sloth is, unless your group is having trouble. Unless your group is having trouble with moving Sloth, or you're in a very high DPS group, in which case you don't have a choice. You need to get out and try to move Sloth right away. Don't mess around with that, because you'll just phase him so quickly that he'll be stuck there forever. In your average group, your average pug or whatever, the DPS is not that high that it matters. So what I would suggest is get used to learning what Sloth's abilities are and how they affect, how they affect not CC, but how they affect, animation locking Sloth, preventing him from moving. And also get used to understanding where you need to stand to kind of move Sloth along. There is kind of a sweet spot where you can back up and still be in range to do damage, and Sloth will move. And if you move at the same pace that he's moving, he will continue to move as long as he doesn't do a skill that animation locks him. And you can kind of walk him back. So you can be in DPS range and walk him back to the spot that he needs to be. Like I said, if your group's having trouble moving, don't mess around with this. Just do what you're supposed to do and go out right away. If you have fixate, or if your group is very high DPS, this will not work. You will not be able to do it. He will animation lock far too much between you phasing him and his skills. It is just impossible. But in your average pug group, it's totally possible. I do it all the time. You can just slowly walk him back and get him into a nice spot. And you can keep doing DPS yourself and not really lose. You'll still lose. You're not going to, you're not going to break the records doing this, but you won't lose as much DPS. And you'll also fix the thing that Phoenix was talking about him taking a weird path and hugging the wall. He has weird pathing, trying to get to the person in the quickest distance, even though what I think is actually going on there is I think that maybe he gets like some kind of buff being on the poison or whatever, and maybe his logic thinks that it's faster for him to travel across the poison at that great of a distance than it is on the ground. I don't know, but yeah, he tries to make the shortest distance and takes weird pathing sometimes. So if you move out that quickly and make this huge gap between him and where where he's standing, he's going to take a weird pathing, and that's going to cost probably more DPS than if you just did like two medium movements instead of the one big one.
Yeah, getting fixated is always a huge pain. Trying to be able to do damage while not pissing off your group by not moving the boss fast enough is definitely a nuanced task that will definitely take some time. Again, I'd say if you're making choices based on what to bring on that fight, I really prefer classes that have larger cleave. I think cleave is really strong there. Some of the issues are the ads, of course, but being able to do damage while he's sitting in poison and being a huge pain. Or needing to move him, so doing like range damage, maybe not just being totally stuck in one place doing damage, I find is pretty beneficial. In general, trying not to have to move more than you need to is also really helpful. So sort of like not making unnecessary big movements or getting flustered by the falling rocks. Knowing exactly what to do, what skills to use for shakes when it's got the wet dog, right? Those kinds of things can be really impactful in that fight. I think, for example, like when I play Scrapper, I like to just do my hammer 4 for the shakes. It will like basically steal enough of those stacks to be blocked that I don't have to worry too much about it. But so much of what I do also, remember how I talked about with each individual fight, knowing how to start a fight is going to be different based on every boss that you're doing. Not like it is in the SFTA. If you look at the benchmark video, every fight is started right on top of the boss. You do exactly the same thing. Whatever that best burst is going to be exactly how you start. I think starting Slothazar is like the most nuanced intro of any boss in the game. You have to be very careful. It's another one of those very rare bosses that you bring to you. So unlike most of them, like Veil Guardian, you bring the boss to the stack. But in this case, you've got a friend that you could very, very easily kill. So one of the big tasks for me when I'm playing a new character, when I'm learning a new build, is how best to do damage while he's moving in. And not kill my friend. And that takes time. It takes time to get that perfect intro, and I promise it is specific. I can tell you skill for skill exactly the way that I do it with every build that I play, because you have to be very intentional. It can't just be random. You should be doing damage while he's moving over. There's no reason not to, but you don't want to kill your friend while that's happening. And you're in that weird position where the boss is moving towards you, so you can't be throwing ranged attacks that reside there for a while. You have to throw those ahead or wait until Sloth finally gets up to the stack. But the rest of it is going to be very specific aiming. Like the angles that I will throw grenades. Just trying to hit Sloth, but not my friend. Or set up bombs in advance, or set up traps that are going to go off once he's in place, and then try to do some range damage as it moves over. These are really important things. I challenge you guys all to go out into raids and start watching the numbers on arc DPS, not just at the end. Right? I think everybody looks at them at the end, or even if you don't have arc DPS, sometimes logs are posted and you read the logs. But I encourage you to look at the first 5 to 10 seconds of every fight. right? Especially if you're playing a build that someone else is also playing in that same fight. See what their numbers are in comparison to you. Are you having to play catch up from the very beginning of the fight onward? You know, like I think it happens very often. I get messages from other Reapers where they're like, dude, like our intro is pretty simple. Why is your burst so much higher than mine? It's these little things, and then it sets you up for success at the very beginning of the fight. And that initial burst is huge, I promise. Paying close attention to that, trying to tweak your build or your intro so that you can best capitalize on damage at the very beginning of the fight, regardless of where that boss spawns or where you as the stack are encountering the boss, etc. Those kinds of decisions are going to make the biggest differences, and I want you guys to go out into the world and start watching Arc DPS in the beginning. See what that burst looks like. See if somebody else is getting much better burst than you, and then see why that is. Try to pay attention, because I promise everyone's got their own little things, and for me, it's probably the thing that I work on the most in raids is how to handle each phase. What skills I use in what order based on what boss and what phase. And Sloth is a huge example of that. I have worked hard on certain classes to find what I think is the ideal way to begin that fight.
Quickly, I'd say a good tip for hollows: drop your rifle turret on this fight if you have it. I wouldn't give up Mind Kit if you're doing PBM, and take Photon Wall. The biggest DPS loss, obviously, in any kind of power class, the intro is one of the most important things. And the biggest DPS loss on this fight is either the intro or the ending when things get messy, one of the two, depending on your group. Dodging that intro can be rough, and dodging in general is DPS loss, especially if you have to double dodge. Photon Wall, if you do it right, will block all of them, all of the falling rocks in his opening tantrum, and you can just DPS, and I promise you, you will have the highest opening burst of anyone else there. Except maybe, like, I don't know, a P Chrono that manages to do his Blade Fury right.
P Chrono that manages to do his whole rotation intro without actually killing the slump.
Yeah.
Hello, Focus 5.
That's why I swapped to pistol.
Yeah, so I think that about covers Sloth Azor. We are not going to talk about Trio in depth. I will add like tiny little things. Power DPS generally better. It's a lot of little mobs. You can burst them down fast. Your DPS does not matter on Trio because it's a timed event. The only thing it matters on is Narella. If you really want to increase your DPS, so Narella, bring something with a ton of burning. Give her exclamation point burning stacks, and then you'll be good to go. But yeah, aside from that, power DPS is better. Anything with pools is going to be better if you're playing a Condi build. So you got your Condi Firebrand, bring out your Power Soul Beast that you rage quit on Slothosaur because you got Fixate 3 times. Zane puts down a little AoE. I feel like no one ever knows what it does. The AoE just blinds you repeatedly, so if you actually want to do more damage to Zane, don't stand in the blind fields, and he won't, half your attacks won't be missed. Yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say on Trio. Sorry, I'm not really going to give you guys a floor. We're not going to talk about Trio DPS.
Yo, I got a complaint earlier that we didn't go over ideal DPS strategies for Spirit Run.
Yeah, well, you guys can figure out Trio on your own, sorry. Moving on to Matthias. Okay, Matthias, Condi DPS is definitely going to be better. Matthias, the bubble does come up, but Matthias does not cleanse Condis when he creates that bubble around himself. And you're constantly moving on Matthias, and Matthias is pretty constantly moving on that fight as well, which means Torment is good. Anything that allows that DPS to continue ticking while you're running out to a weld to drop your corruption off, those things are good. Be very careful on this fight about killing your sacrifice friend. Again, this is greeting responsibly. Some builds are just naturally Cleavy on Condis. The example everyone loves to throw out is Condition Firebrand. You will destroy your sacrifice friend if you are standing in the middle, because a lot of your damage is like PB AoEs, pretty large cones in front of you. Just be very careful about your friend. If you know someone is about to get sacrificed, please don't put down like a fire field that lasts 10 seconds. You're just going to be building up burning on them. Try to CC them as fast as possible to eliminate any chances that you will kill them. That's always nice as well. Anything with movement skills is going to be very good on Matthias. It's going to help you get out for mechanics and get back in quicker. And there are a lot of mechanics to get out for: going to the wells, dropping off the poison during the fire phases and the final phase, and then spreading out with your AoEs. So yeah, anything with re-engagement skills, like your Condi Soul Beast on your dagger, you can use your dagger to re-engage. On a Renegade, if you know the Shiro rotation, Shiro is going to be really good. Everything on Shiro allows you to do mechanics faster, whether you're using impossible odds or you are getting out or re-engaging. So that's really good. Although Kala does have CC, I'll give it that. Yeah, those are all great. Another thing, as far as creating responsibly goes, with the AoEs, people are so bad at this. They get an AoE and then they continue moving the entire time they have the AoE. Please don't do this to your friends. Do not get one of those AoEs and then just keep walking backward the entire time you have it. Just get away, get to a safe space, and stand there. You can keep doing DPS at range. If you're DPS, hopefully people in your group know that the supports will generally spread out a little bit further. Or if you have a very nice re-engage skill, you can be one of those people that spreads out further. And the DPSer will be a little more concentrated around Matthias, but please don't like make sudden movements right as they're about to go off. Other people can't predict what you're going to do. And the final thing, comment on that is, make sure your AoE actually explodes, detonates, is gone before you re-engage. Otherwise, you might jump right into someone else and destroy them. So be very careful about those. A lot of Matthias is moving well. Predicting his movement, he will generally move toward the farthest person and then kind of gravitate back in toward the center. And then the responsible aspect of not killing your friends with the various mechanics.
Unless you're cryptic, then his job is to try to kill me with various mechanics. No, I agree. I think movement... Yeah, I know you do. I think movement, like intentional movement, knowing how best to move in Matthias is probably the name of the game for that fight. You do have to leave the stack occasionally if you have, if you have certain mechanics like having to drop the poison crap or go and cleanse yourself in the well. It's very true. Like if you're fighting on stack and you know that you have to go, over here and drop something, that's, it should always be in your mind how best you can take advantage of doing damage in that case. As a chrono, obviously it's pretty easy. Like I said, I would normally drop a clone, run away, do my whole rotation, do things, do whatever, and then I would obviously I took too long, but you could then trade back again with your clone. That's a really good travel skill. Being able to use leaps or re-engaging skills really does make that helpful. I think for the most part, it's just trying to do those basic mechanics pretty cleanly. I don't think that there's much in terms of trying to best capitalize on DPS other than just knowing that he's going to put up his bubble, trying not to get into a period of your rotation where you can't help it. You're going to end up doing a lot of damage to nothing, which is what you don't want to do. CC, obviously, a lack of CC is the biggest part. I think that most groups in Matthias fail on. I think you just start losing people when you don't CC them. So knowing what that is and being able to drop your CC and fluidly go back to doing damage without killing your friend is probably the key. But there's not a whole lot of phasing things. There's just a lot of splitting things. So your ability to engage, re-engage, disengage, drop range skills when you need to, I think is probably how you end up netting the best damage there. Although, oddly enough, some of the best logs that I've ever gotten in Matthias ever have come from Rifle Deadeye. Just because you can just continue your rotation no matter what. He moves around like crazy, right? So much mobility in that fight, which is why I think power classes in general are widely considered to be ineffective there. Because so much of power damage has to be done like while you're walking around, or you have to do things that mobility tends to be the enemy of. But as long as you fully understand where your damage is coming from and how best to use it in a mobile fight, you can do okay. Just all about mastering that mobility.
The only thing I would say on Matthias is the fight doesn't start until somebody crosses the crystal or obviously attacks Matthias. So get up close and have a skill ready, or have a couple skills ready. Depending on how fast you are, you can get off between 1 to 3 skills on Matthias before he puts up his bubble.
True.
So that's really important to get some damage right in the beginning. Also, don't stop your rotation when that bubble's up. You're most likely playing a Condi class. You can keep stacking those Condis. Why would you stop? Last thing would be, don't be afraid, once you understand how the bubble mechanic works, don't be afraid to stand inside the bubble if you need to avoid something or mitigate something, or whatever the case may be. The bubble does not mean a no movement zone. He shoots out a line. If you want to see how it works, go watch Plenix's video. But he shoots out a line of
Oh my
projectiles.
gosh, I want it. Where is it?
And as long as you're not standing in between that line of projectiles and whatever is reflecting them, you will be fine. The bubble itself is not a no walk zone. In fact, 80 to 90% of the bubble is free to walk around as long as you don't cross that line of projectiles that is going towards whoever is reflecting.
There you go. Click on that. That is how I teach Matthias to this day. And if you want to know how that mechanic works, Plenix and his room fan are the best way. It's the best way to know.
Cool. Merrick, I know you have a static to go to in about 30 minutes, so we will try and get through Wing 3 and then wrap up.
Faster. DPS Masterclass Part 3.
Yeah, apparently. Okay, so skipping over Escort entirely, please play power DPS, play something with pulls. That's about it. No one cares about your DPS on Escort, just kill things. Going into KC, obviously power damage, it is probably the biggest power boss of all time, even more so than Conjured Amalgamate. Please play power DPS. Condi DPS is just so underwhelming. Even like a Conditioned Firebrand, Condi Firebrand is super bursty, so you can play it on a lot of power based fights, and you won't notice a huge drop, if any at all. You will on KC, I promise you. Play power. KC, a big thing is going to be engaging KC, so just try and know where your tanks is standing. Normally they're just going to be standing sort of between KC and the wall, and KC is going to sit there for a little bit, but know that as soon as that statue starts glowing, you have to take him over there. So try not to, when you've been sitting there for a few seconds, try not to like put an AoE there just in case, just until you see which statue happens to be glowing. Then if it's the one that's like right behind you, feel free, put your gravity well, put your whatever you happen to be taking down, you can put it down and then you'll be fine. But otherwise, don't put like your procession of blades down and then you just now notice that that statue's been glowing and Casey's gonna walk right out of your procession of blades. It feels bad.
Feels bad.
So Casey, the big thing is going to be the rifts. How the rifts work. Obviously this doesn't apply for high DPS groups where you're skipping the burn phases, but if you're that high DPS, then you probably don't need this masterclass. But pushing through the rifts, it does not extend the time of the burn phase whatsoever. The burn phase lasts 20 seconds regardless. What the rifts do is they give KC a stack of Compromised. It's a debuff that increases incoming damage by 75% per stack. This is why looking at different logs on KC to compare DPS is extremely hard unless you're doing the exact same amount of rifts the entire time, because even if you did like if you accidentally do one during a burn phase, it will dramatically change your DPS. So you really want to look for a consistent log, like a lot of pug groups will tend to do 223 these days. But you know, if your pusher, you know, they accidentally pushed it the wrong way, or you know, you just got a really unlucky seeker that yoinked that orb before you could get it through a second one, it's going to affect your DPS. So it's going to be unreliable to look at DPS where the number of rifts that you're pushing through are different. So just keep that in mind when looking at logs. Another big thing is where you're starting in your burn phase. You should know how many rifts you're pushing through or you're intending to push through on a DPS build on KC. It will help you precast for the burn phases, which is extremely important. It will also inform you which skills you need to save. If I'm playing a Dragon Hunter, as I would as a DPS on KC, if we're pushing for rifts, then I'm gonna use my procession of blades on the mesmer projection that hops out of the statue. There's no reason not to. It's gonna be off cooldown by the time we start the burn phase. If we're pushing through one, then you should absolutely not. Even like, you know, your 20-30 second skills, they're not gonna be off cooldown for you to get the biggest burst during the burn phase. So yeah, keep that in mind. It matters for multiple reasons there. Yeah, I think those are the big things. Obviously the projections, you can use them to help with your cleavy things, like your symbol trait on a Dragon Hunter and stuff like that will give you more stacks of that. Your multi-hits on hollow, stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's about all I got. So you too.
Coordination. Communication with your group. Knowing absolutely for sure how many orbs are being done ahead of time, being able to do a very comfortable precast, knowing exactly the amount of skills, the portion of your rotation you want to capitalize in is paramount importance to KC. And that, I think nothing could better suit that explanation or demonstrating that than a Hollowsmith. Hollowsmith has so many different ways to play it, and there's of course a literal preheating that the class does. So basically what Phoenix was saying was that the amount of orbs that you push or the amount of rifts that you push the orb through will increase the amount of damage that the boss takes. But remember, even though the burn phase is whatever, she said it was 20 seconds long, the goal is just to phase it at its percentage, 66%, 33%, and then dead. And so in that period of time, it is going to be the difference between a certain amount of gap between when he first lands to when he starts doing the blender attack. Or it could just be 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I mean, some ridiculous amount of time. I've seen Uber groups that have a ton of damage push all 5 orbs and then just have it be laughably fast. So being able to understand how that works, that the phase ends when the boss gets to a certain percentage, and knowing exactly how to fit in the highest portion of your damage in the allotted amount of time that you have before it reaches that phase is really the name of the game. So for a Hollowsmith, I've watched Hollows have whole conversations like, oh dude, like, so that was too many orbs. Or like, what did you preheat at? I was at this heat. What heat were you at? Because you're trying to get it so that it's perfect, so that you reach the exact highest point in the graph. If you can imagine your DPS graph, the biggest spike, and then the phase ends right after you've done the biggest amount of damage that you can do. And so understanding that definitely comes with like an extra level of experience with your build. Understanding your burst, having it ready, knowing exactly how to get it done, trying to do what I've always said this whole time is getting rid of the waste. If there's any casting you could do ahead of time, just before that orb is pushed out and KC lands from the ceiling, that should be done. Anything that can be done ahead of time, do it ahead of time. And your eyes should be glued on that orb, and the pusher should have communicated well enough to you that they are either pushing it out at that moment after 2 rifts or whatever, or you're watching some pushers just leave it and they wait for the ads to come and collect. That way that they can get back to the stack and drop some might. That's helpful. As a support, please, I know that this is a DPS masterclass, but it could not be more important that supports realize that precasting for you is equally as important as precasting for a DPS class. Not only should you be having alacrity the entire time because people are waiting for certain skills to be back off cooldown, but having quickness, alacrity, might, fury as much as humanly possible right before the boss lands. Not after, not starting that rotation when the boss lands, but making sure that you've got that ahead of time, because that window that we're working with is pretty small. And in some groups, it's going to be very small, and you're really going to want everyone to be at their peak performance, ready to go, which means as a Hollow-Smith, you have spent that moment or that phase while the orb is being pushed around, making sure that you're delicately balancing your explosion stacks, trying to keep those up by chucking grenades, dropping bombs, and also getting your heat to exactly what you want it to be. As an ECSU, it's much harder, of course. You're balancing that heat. It wants to go down on its own, so it's going to take a little bit more effort. As PBM, you can preheat, and it'll stay exactly what it is, so you can not have to focus so much on that, but make sure that it's done early, get it out of the way in case something bad happens with an orb being pushed out accidentally. That does happen. I'm sure you all know that it does. And then spending the rest of the time working on your explosion stacks, making sure they maintain 10. I play a lot of Reaper there. You guys have seen my whole precast. I will make sure that I'm in Lich form. I've summoned my bone minions. And just as the orb is being pushed out, I will even try to get the cast times on my wells done a little early so that they're dropped just before the boss lands. Get in that big DPS burst that you can, and then hopefully have it end right at that period. So different classes are going to capitalize on those windows in different ways. And we as DPS, who do a lot of DPS and do this often, we're constantly thinking about those kinds of things. So like in a group where where more orbs are going to be pushed, right? So if the orb pusher in a pug goes, oh no, I don't trust DPS ever, we're just going to do 5. You know, for somebody who has a little bit of a wider graph, they're going to groan. Oh gosh, I'm not going to have my chance to do as much damage as I want. I'm only going to get a few skills in. Whereas a Soul Beast, which has, I think it's the highest peak damage within 6 seconds, like very short, just a few seconds, it's so high. So a Soul Beast is just going to be like rubbing his hands together or like tapping his fingertips together like Mr. Burns, right? Like absolutely diabolically happy about this because he's going to be able to get his biggest amount of damage in, which is just a few seconds in, and then the phase ends. So understanding how your burst works, the kind of window that you should be in. Maybe if you're doing really a lot of damage, for me as a PBM, if I'm in a group that has a lot of damage as a Hollow-Smith, and it's going to be a lot of orbs pushed, and it's going to be very short, I'm going to go, oh crap, maybe I need to preheat a little higher, get my heat a little higher so I can get to that overheat moment as fast as possible to get that giant amount of damage in. So it is a highly phased fight. Make sure that you're paying attention to that. I can't talk about KC without and a KC training here called Greeting Responsibly without talking about the blender that happens after the orb catching phase. Everyone knows that as soon as the orb catching phase is done, he does an explosion, right? And that explosion damage, the amount of damage that explosion does is augmented by the amount of orbs that you missed, right? So the more orbs you catch, the less damage you take after that. But then there's this moment where he stays in the center of the arena and does the blender ability and can be DPS'd. Your level of comfort and your ability to do DPS in this moment is really, really important. So when I'm doing training raids, I tend to have everyone stack at arrow. I will have them just stack there right after the orb catching is done so that they're all together and can be healed. And then I just make them stay back there and throw range damage only. Because they don't understand Blender, they don't really know how best to do this safely. You can bring Glyph of Stars to stop a certain amount of time worth of Condi application, so that's good if you really want to help your group greed and you don't trust them otherwise. But knowing your exact cleave range is really important here for your ability to do damage. Remembering that, of course, as soon as he's done with that blender, he's going to pick a fixate of a random member and he's going to leap to you. And if you're not at the freaking wall with that statue that's about to spawn, you have 9 other people who are glaring at you, having made a giant mistake and potentially wiping the group. So this is a moment where knowing what your cleave skills are, knowing how big of a range that is so that you can safely DPS, knowing when to leave the boss and head for the wall, and even trying to get range damage in as you're leaving can all give you a little bit of an edge when this is happening. But you have to be careful, and I encourage you to do it just a little bit more and a little bit more as you get more and more comfortable with this fight, because like I said, this is the very essence of greeting responsibly. If you greed irresponsibly in this moment, everyone's gonna see it, everyone's gonna know. If you're too close, you're not paying enough attention to the damage you're taking, or you're getting stacks from the blender and you go down, people are going to have to res you, which means that there's more and more and more chance that it's one of the people in the center now who are going to get the fixative KC. He's going to land right there and you're going to be in deep trouble. Or you're going to be the one who has stayed in too long to greed and is trying to run back to the wall when he leaps at you and you've left him in the middle as well. So these are the kinds of things where just practice makes perfect. Understanding your skills and when to use them is important. But try, because I bring this up a lot. Go into the SFTA, really get a good feel for the cleave range of your skills. I say all the time, like, guys, max melee range, right? When we see the danger donut, is what my guild calls it, but the blender. When that starts to happen, max melee range, and I watch people go like this. They back out about this far, and they think that's their max range, and then they just get absolutely melted. When it turns out that their max range is actually much farther than they think that it is. So, I mean, I'm on a terrible example. I'm on a freaking bomb. Look, like, this is hitting from back here, which is gross. Cleave is enormous. But sometimes, but it's always going to be a little bit farther than you actually think it is. So, see, I'm whacking from pretty far away even on my dinky little hammer. So just things to consider.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left, so Cryptic, if you want to add anything on for Casey.
No. I think what we talked about last week kind of covered it, or Tuesday kind of covered it. You know, if you're a like Ranger, you're Axe 5, you have to kind of move in a little bit to do that. So do that, step right back out, or get right on the edge. Don't stand there the whole time, though, because you'll just kill yourself. Yeah, just greed responsibly.
Greed responsibly.
Well, Merrick has a static in 12 minutes. So we have to end things out here. I'm sure people actually want to hear about all the bosses. I had a feeling this would happen, but I will see what I can do about arranging another masterclass, maybe more unofficially or something. But at the very least, Merrick should be streaming it, and we should be able to actually talk about more bosses, maybe even all of them. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Unfortunately, we have to close out for now. Thank you, Merrick and Cryptic, for actually talking about the DPS aspects. That's all I got for you guys.
We're the greediest DPS around. It's only fitting. Yep, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate you coming. Remember, this is part 2 of this series that we've done. We did the first one on Tuesday. If you weren't around for that, the VOD is up. You can watch it freely on my channel. We're planning also to download it, maybe upload it to YouTube. It's not something we can condense too much, but if anyone really does want to learn all those details, they are available to you. There's a lot of really good information. We went over a lot of stuff on Tuesday, so hopefully you guys can check that out if you're interested. This stuff is great, man. I mean, I hope you guys are getting something out of it. There definitely is a lot of knowledge here. I really enjoyed the last meeting that we had on Tuesday because we got to go over all those details, and then I got to go out and raid and then refer to a bunch of it and got to show it off in actual raid. So I'm going to be doing that, of course, for the next week or so. I'll just be like, hey, you guys remember when I said this? Here it is. I'm going to show it in the various raids. So I will be raiding in just a little while. So don't go anywhere. Pueblo66, bro, thank you so much for that follow. Really appreciate it. Remember, if you guys have any extra questions that were not asked or answered in today's stream, go ahead and ask me anytime. You can PM me. MaericTV is a character I have, so that will always work. I'm on NA. Feel free to join our Discord. This is also a Reborn of Embers guild event that we're in. If you're interested in the guild, it's very PMA. It is rebornofembers.com. Check that out. If you'd like to join my Discord where I coordinate this stream and a lot of the information that I provide, feel free to join us right here. There's a link. But otherwise, yeah, thank you guys for being patient. Thank you for listening. I'm going to take a quick break, grab a drink, grab a snack, use the restroom, and then I'm going to start raiding. So hopefully you guys won't go anywhere. I'll see you in just a few. You're awesome. BRB.